Hello and welcome everyone again to the Tuesday Night Smite podcast, the show where we manage to piss off a different fan base every week. Or well, a fan base of a different team. Said that wrong. Doesn't matter. Anyway, I'm going to be your host, the Robbie Dog. I'm joined today by Just Sabo. If you've heard, Psycho has left. He didn't think he could probably fulfill his role anymore, so he's not going to continue to do the podcast with us. We're sad to announce that. Obviously, we enjoyed doing the podcast with him, and yeah, if he ever wants to come back, we'll try to hold a seat open for him or something. But yeah. Anyway, today's episode is going to be episode 12 of the podcast. We're mostly going to talk about relegations today, and about the news that basically just dropped a couple of around an hour before we started recording this, which is the preview to Season 5 of the SPL and of the entire Smite Pro scene. So we're obviously going to talk about that as well towards the end of the show. But yeah, let's start first of all with relegations. Sabo, what is there to say about relegations?
Well, Saturday is the kickoff of relegations, and as always, it's the EU up first. The teams will be the Poppies and the Burritos from the SPL. We already knew that was coming. The only change to the rosters there is Poppies have let go of Oho Boom and brought on Mr. Nazer as their mid laner. Challenger Cup teams, some names you'll recognize, some names are fairly new. We'll start off with the team New Game Plus. It's the number one Challenger Cup or Challenger Circuit team coming into the relegations. Bastruckle in the solo lane. Repicos, the Season 1 jungler who made it all the way to Worlds with Titans, is the jungler. Filippo is the mid laner. Murder, the Obeys former support, is the support, and then Game Hunter, the longtime player that everybody should be familiar with, is their ADC. Second place Challenger Circuit team this weekend for EU is going to be Victorious Secrets. Yeah, good pun of a name, but moving on from that. Got Julio69 in the solo lane, Frostyak in the jungle, Mr. Seffen in the mid, and then the duo lane is Lancewolf and Spudio or Spudio. I'm not sure how you say it, but
it's an EU name, so pronunciation could pretty much be random. Yeah.
But yeah, some familiar faces mixed in with some new faces.
Yeah. When I look at these two rosters, I see three players that I've really heard a lot of, obviously because they have been in the SPL at times. Obviously, Repicas, as you pointed out. No. Repicas, that's a good name. Someone should name himself. Yeah. Repicas. Who was obviously, back in the day when he was in the SPL, considered to be one of the best junglers there, right? Together with, at the time, already adapting, but also QFred, and also, well, himself. And Murder, also known as Kanye Life, going all the way back to the Titan days as well, together with Replicas, where they made second place at the first World Championship, obviously, with that roster, with them, and obviously Adoraxia, Confrey, and Pretty Prime with them as well. Yeah, and those guys have obviously been in the SPL before, have had success in the SPL before, right? Because Titan was, in Season 2, still a good SPL team, even though they didn't end up making it to Worlds. They were both considered good players as well. So this kind of stands already for the caliber of this team. And then you sort of have the third player where we know he's good and where we know that, and where we remember him from previous appearances in Professional Smite, which is obviously Game Hunter. First person, I think, in Pro Smite to get a pentakill on his Vamana back when he was playing solo. He's now going to be playing ADC. But he's also always had these hunters in his god pool. So I think ADC is still a role that fits him well, even though I'm not entirely sure if he's gonna ever get to the level as an ADC that he's been at with solo. But yeah, you never know about him, right? So I think this New Game Plus roster overall is looking pretty solid, right? Obviously, I can't talk too much about West Treckle and Filippo, just because I've never really seen them play before, and I haven't really had time to research either of these teams, honestly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not as familiar with the EU teams as I am with NA teams. I have watched a little bit of the Challenger circuit in the NA, but just going back to, like I said, season 1 with Repicos and Murder being on that Titans team. Murder was also in that season 3, it's season 3 World Championship runner-up, Obey, alongside his teammates, Pretty Prime and Atarax. Yeah.
That was Frezzy.
I thought they were the same player.
No. Okay, so Murder is Kanye-like, and Frezzy is Panda-like.
I thought Panda-like was Kanye-like.
He's not. It's confusing.
It is confusing because I'm sounding like an ass now. Okay, well, anyway, forget what I said. But Repicos and Murder, we know these two from days of the past, and like you said, Game Hunter is a familiar face. First pentakill in a professional setting on Vimana. Vastral or Vastrikal. I'm gonna stop saying the entire name. I'm just calling Vass and Filippo are the two question marks here because, like, we've never seen either of them play. I think with the other three being on the team, they have enough experience to make a push at relegations, but we haven't seen these three perform at a level that they have in days past recently. The Murder was relegated, I believe, in the summer when Lion Guard. I'm getting that right. He was the Lion Guard support.
This is going. I'm not entirely sure. Let me look it up real quick. Murder. He was on Leftovers, apparently. No, he wasn't. Sanguine. Huh. And then he just switched from Sanguine to New Game Plus.
Okay.
It's confusing.
Thanks. Well, anyway, we haven't seen him play at that level that we saw him at in the World Season 1. So it's very much a question of what do the new guys do, and can the old guys, the older players, recapture or play like they used to play. This team could be a very good team going into the SPL. Top of EU? No, definitely not. But they could, they look like a team that could be 5th or 6th, or going into the gauntlet this year. That it could make a run in the gauntlet. But they have to survive relegations first. They have to beat either Poppies or Burrito, and they have to move into the SPL. And I don't see it happening, only because, like I said, we don't know what the two new players are going to do, and we don't know what we're going to get from the other three, because their gameplay has been down from where we were used to seeing it back in Season 1 and Season 2. And even with Game Hunter last season, like, at parts of last season, Game Hunter was a top-level player.
Yeah, I think Replicas should have the talent to get back there to a top level, right? Just because out of these three players, I think he is the one where he has most clearly been there, and the others have always sort of been hit or miss. Game Hunter, he really had his best time and his only real dominant time when Smite was a really new game. So I'm not sure how much we can take away from that even in general. And obviously he's had motivational issues, which is why he originally stopped playing professionally. And it's unclear whether he has ever been able to catch up with that disadvantage he has through the. And yeah, I think Murder. The funny thing about Murder is he's never been considered an amazing support, right? He's always just had sort of jank picks or off-meta picks that have made him good. Again, going back to Season 1 and to his Emir and Ares pick in the finals against Cog Prime, sorry, where they won off of that, but it wasn't necessarily because Murder is a great support mechanically compared to the other supports in the SPL. So yeah, there's obviously question marks behind those three players, and there's even bigger question marks behind the other two. But overall, just looking from this roster, I do think they have a shot at making it through relegations, right? Because they have players where we know from them that they can perform well.
I agree. I do think they have a shot at making it through relegation. It's all based on, well, of course, it's based on how they play, but it's got to be a team effort. It can't be just one player like Repicos going off and helping him make it to the SPL. Because I think the Poppies and the Burrito or Burrito Gaming, Burrito Esports, don't quite remember the whole team name for them, but I do believe they're good enough to where they won't allow one player to go off and cause them that spot in the SPL. If we don't see a team effort, if we don't see players like Murder and Game Hunter step up their gameplay, it's not going to happen. It's got to be somebody. It's got to be somebody more than just Repicos. If Repicos goes off, you have to have that second player, in my opinion. And I don't know enough about Vass. I don't know enough about Filippo just to comment on their play style. But like you said, Murder never been really the best support in EU, but has had these jank picks that has made him good at times. Game Hunter has some motivational issues playing the game at a high level. It's got to be more than just the one player to get through relegations. And if it's just, like I said, if it's just Repicos, they're not going to make it.
Yeah, I think that's the worrisome part, is whether the rest of the roster manages to show up. Because Repicos, I think he's going to show up. But yeah. On to the other team then, that we already mentioned, Victorious Secrets. As I said, 5 players are known to me really, really quite a bit out of these rosters. And on Victorious Secrets, the first one is obviously going to be Frostiak. He was in the SPL for a very long time. I think going back to maybe even even season 0 or the pre-season. But definitely after that has always been on these sort of middle of the pack teams, generally. And within these teams, he's always been one of the harder carries, in my opinion. He's also always had a fairly big god pool, right? I think Emir Jungle was one of his favorites, the Frostiak. And so I think there's a lot of things we can expect from him, right? He's obviously still mechanically talented. He could make some waves in these relegations as well. And the other person that I know is Mr. Stefan. I think he was also in the SPL for a brief time. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, he was last spring. He was wasn't on New Game Plus. He was on I think he was on Sanguine along with Murder. Not sure, but yeah, he was a part of the team in the spring split.
Yeah, well, Sanguine obviously back then wasn't that good of a team. But they went 0-0-7 in that split. Still, we know his name. That's gotta be worth something.
If, at the very least, it's got to be the experience that he has playing in the SPL against SPL level mids that is going to help him here. The other, like you said, the other name we recognize is Frostiak, and he was the Dignitas jungler for a long time, alongside Shadow Nightmare in the mid. And when Frostiak decided to leave the Lion Guard Esport and really end that team, that partnership with Shadow Nightmare, we haven't seen him since in the SPL. He is a mechanically gifted jungler. He is one of those junglers that will play a lot like Weekend in North America, will play a lot of gods in that jungle role and can somehow make it work. I haven't seen that teamwork from Frostiak and Mr. Stefan yet, because I haven't watched any of the EU Challenger circuit. But those two, if the cohesion is there, if they work together well as a team, as a unit, and it could cause some troubles in relegations for these other teams. But Julio 69, Lance Wolf, and Spudio, I have no knowledge on. So I can't really make a prediction for Victoria's Secret based on two players. I don't know what else. The biggest factor for me in this is not the two players, Frostiak and Mr. Stefan. I believe those two will show up for relegations. It's the other three that we don't know too much about. The duo lane, you're looking at going up against Murder and Game Hunter. My mind just went blank on the poppies.
Yeah, my mind always goes blank on the poppies. I can look it up for you. If you ask nicely, I will look it up for you.
Will you look them up for me? But Burrito,
Okay.
Gaspanify and Falsify, these are duo lanes we know enough about to know how they're going to play. Lance Wolf and Spudio are, like I said, two new players, or two fairly new players in the scene, and we don't know enough about how they play. But just the talent that they're going up against leads me to believe that this team is not going to make it out of relegations.
Yeah, I see them having a much harder time doing it than I see New Game Plus having. First of all, because only one of them is going to make it through, and they could both make it through, right? But still, I think we are guaranteed that one of the SPL teams always makes it through, just because of how they've looked this split so far, right? We have Poppies, I think, splitting with Elevate even, which is obviously a fairly big feat. And we had Burrito genuinely looking very good in some matches that they then still ended up losing. And I think those signs that we saw from both teams lead me to believe that at least one of them should be able to keep their SPL roster, regardless of which one it's gonna be. And it's going to be hard for both Challenger Cup teams to make it through. And if one of them's gonna make it through, I think it's much more likely to be New Game Plus, just because their roster is looking so much better than that of Victoria's Secrets. Yeah. Not sure.
See, I'm on a different boat. I think both SPL teams maintain their spot. Don't know enough about Victoria's Secrets to make an accurate prediction for them. Frostiak and Mr. Stefan should be good enough to make it interesting, but we don't know how the other three are going to perform, and the duo lane is a big question mark based on just the opponents they're playing. New Game Plus, yes, they have the talent to do it. The question is are they going to actually do it? And that's win a spot. And I don't know if they can, and I don't think they will. I do believe the Poppies and Burrito keep their spots coming out of EU, and I think we both agree that if there is one Challenger Cup team in EU that's going to be able to take a spot away from them, it's going to be New Game Plus. But
Yeah.
I don't think it happens. I do think the Burrito and Poppies maintain their spot.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most likely result. I do think that individually New Game Plus should have the tools to match them, at least. Burrito, that is. I'm not entirely sure if their teamwork's going to be up to par, because Burrito now has an SPL split behind them in their back, and they've gained experience. They have probably grown as a team. I think we've seen them overall improve as the splits went on. And if they carry some of that improvement into these relegations, then they should be able to keep their spot, obviously. The question is just whether how much of it is going to translate, right? And also how good of a unit New Game Plus is going to be. I mean, they obviously won the Challenger circuit, so there has to be something there. Just whether it's going to be good enough to beat Burrito is a bit questionable. I think Poppies, out of the two teams, the two SPL teams, they're a better one. And I'm fairly certain that they will still be the better one with Mr. Nazer instead of Oshoboom in mid. So I do not expect them to drop out. I think if one team out of the SPL drops down in the Challenger circuits, it's going to be Burrito. And if one makes it up, it's going to be New Game Plus. But whether that's going to happen is written in the clouds or whatever.
It should be interesting, to say the least, because each team plays 3 games, and they each play each other at least once. And we talked about this last week. The whole best of one can really throw some stuff at you that you're not really expecting. And so if a Challenger Circuit team plays well in one match against one of the SPL teams, that could cost them the spot. And we do feel that Poppies and Burrito are the better teams going into the relegations this weekend. But you never know with best of ones. We could actually be seeing both Challenger Circuit teams come through. We don't expect it to happen, like I said. But best of ones are basically a coin flip. The best, you hope the best team is going to win, but you don't always get it because with one game scenarios, it's not the team that's the best. It's the team that plays the best in that one game.
Yeah, I think it's not necessarily a coin flip. It's more trying to roll over a 4 on a 20-sided dice. Right? So it's not 50-50. It's very much still lopsided in favor of the better team, but it's not as lopsided as a best of 3 would be. So yeah, that's basically what can happen as well, right? We might not see the best 2 teams out of relegations actually make it into the SPL, just because on that day they might not look their best or their average level.
Yeah. Hell, last relegations we had Flashpoint make it with their roster, and look what they did this past split.
Hey, you would have to prove that another team that went to relegations would have done better. Right.
Well, the oxygen supremacy. Everybody thought oxygen supremacy coming off the run they had at the spring split gauntlet. A lot of people thought that they would be able to win a spot away from them, and it is actually the SPL teams kept their spot, and Flashpoint somehow did it, and now we don't see the oxygen supremacy team anymore because you got 3 players in the SPL from that team on 3 different teams.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Just
So it's not always the best team; it's the team that plays the best in that one game.
yeah, like Flashpoint. Just no. We're gonna get to Flashpoint later. I think we actually, if we want to wrap up the EU side now, we can get to Flashpoint right now. What do you say?
Well, do you want to make final predictions for EU, or do you just want to leave it as it is?
We probably should. Well, I think, as you said, most likely scenario is both SPL teams keeping their spot. So that would be my prediction.
Yeah, like I said, I already agree with that. Poppies and Burritos should be the teams that they're the better teams. They should be the teams that win. So we expect EU to stay fairly the same as it was last split.
Yeah. To be fair, I think both of us also expected that to happen going into the last relegations as well, and that obviously wasn't the case. Except maybe we expected Sanguine to drop out. But yeah.
Yeah, it was. I will admit this: it was kind of sad not seeing a player like Shadow Nightmare in the SPL this last split, because I do think he's one of the best mid laners in the game. But
yeah.
You lose in relegations, you can't really be a part of the SPL.
Yeah. I think Shadow Nightmare at least has the potential to be one of the best. He didn't look too good in the spring, and obviously he's retired now. So it's sad to see him gone, right? He could have been like a mid-tier mid in the SPL.
My opinion, he was the best player on a bad team. Given,
yeah, definitely.
Much like Scary D was the best player on a bad team with that Rendozo roster in the spring of Season 3. And he finally got a spot on LG and was able to make the most out of it. And we got to see what he was actually capable of with a good team around him. We never got to see that with Shadow Nightmare.
Well, we did at times, right? I think... Okay, we're also going way back now again. Because actually, I looked it up while I was talking about Frostiak. Back in Season 1, these two guys, Frostiak and Shadow Nightmare playing together, actually made it to... actually got first place in the regular season of the SPL.
Yeah, but they never did anything at LANs to amount to anything.
Yeah, sure, but... Like I said, I just think Shadow Nightmare has had his chances as well to show what he's capable of, and he has shown what he's capable of at times with a good roster behind him, right? It's basically my point.
Yeah.
Because they've always, like before this season, he's always been on a decent roster, honestly. They've never been bad, they've just not been at the top. But they were always sort of getting there, but they never got there.
Yeah, and I also learned Reels is no longer... Reels... Isn't he a Overwatch pro now?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought.
I think he's
Any
playing...
hope of Reels?
I think he's playing for the UK team. Probably like right about now for Overwatch's World Cup thingy. I don't know.
I just learned the other day that he had moved on to Overwatch. And I was thinking a couple of weeks ago, wouldn't it be awesome to have Reels back in the SPL? Well, I guess that dream's over with.
It's sad. Never gonna happen, probably.
Reels, I think we both can agree, was probably the best ADC in Europe for a good amount of time.
Yeah, like going back to Season 1 again. Because Youngbae had dropped off quite a bit. He was probably the best one back then, and probably for quite a long time in Season 2 as well.
Until Emilito and Funballer really matched him, I feel like he was the best ADC in Europe for a long time. And it wasn't until we saw Funballer and Emilito come around that we saw anybody who could challenge him for that top spot. But we're reminiscing about the old days. Old days are never going to come back, no matter how much we want them to.
I don't really miss the old days. I just miss old players from the old days.
I miss Confrey.
Yeah, where's Convery? Isn't he like a mid laner now or something?
I don't know if he's still playing Smite, but because the rumor I had heard that he had quit Smite after he left Titan.
Huh. I've never heard anything about that. I think he was at least in the Challenger Cup some time afterwards. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe he's back, maybe he was never gone. Not entirely sure. Speaking of someone who has never really been here, Flashpoint. And you know the other teams in NA relegations.
What the hell do we say about Flashpoint that we haven't already said? They got a new roster.
Yeah, I think we talked about that already.
Yeah, I think we have to, but
they
recap.
Hey, the good thing is, out of their entire roster that they had, they kept the best player, Sobs.
Sob. I do think he was the best player on that team last split.
Yeah. The issue is they also kept the worst.
I don't care. Yeah.
Not Man Ray.
I don't know if Man Ray was the worst player.
Who was worse than him?
Honestly, Shadowq.
Huh? Really?
And I'm saying that out of. I'm not saying that because I think Shadowq is bad anymore. I love watching the guy play. I really do. But his days of being a good player are behind him, and I've said this already before. Need to move on to coaching there, buddy, because it's over. You're not going to capture your days of old. Your heydays are over. So, and you're not the talent evaluator that Payne Devion is. We've seen that already. We have enough of a sample size of your talent evaluation that we can pretty much say that you're not the same talent evaluator as Payne Devion. So
yeah. See, I think Shadowq still has a fairly important leadership role within that team, so I don't think you can call him the worst. I think Man Ray could easily be replaced by another random mid.
Well, see, if this team makes it through relegations, the only person I see getting replaced is Sobs. Because right now, Vedium doesn't have a home and a team to play with, and we know he and Shadowq have played with each other before, and that they like each other. And you're going to tell me Sobs is better than Vedium? I don't think he is.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The one player I see being replaced is Sobs, but yeah. Go back to tell me how I had a good point. I like to hear it sound like that.
It's a good point, but I think it's largely an irrelevant one because I don't think they're going to make it through relegation. But yeah, let's wait with that.
I don't think so either.
So yeah,
Right.
the other teams. Obviously, first let's talk about Flashpoint, what their roster is. We have Xenon Hawk in solo. We have Mexiety. Is that how you pronounce it?
That's how you say it, Mexiety.
Okay. Mexiety as jungler, Man Ray in mid, Shadowq as captain and support, and Sobs as their ADC. The other team from the SPL that we have going into relegations is Team AI, with Walrus in solo lane, El Chapo in jungle, T-Money in mid, Incon back in the SPL, kinda, as support, and Xeno as their ADC. And the challenger teams coming in are SPL Gatekeepers, basically what is the remnants of that Oxygen Supremacy team. Probably not even anyone from that team on this team anymore. Mando Warrior in solo lane, Grave in the jungle, Moswall in mid, Pain of Beyond in support. Yeah, the Pain of Beyond. And they to remember as ADC. And the second team we have is a Mighty Storm, Great name, by the way. Ozzy in solo, Plasma with a C, or with a Z, if you're European. In jungle, Venenu in mid, Vivian X3 with the N capitalized for some reason in support, and Ghost with a 0 instead of an O and as ADC. How do you like that introduction?
Well, let's talk about the Team AI roster, because their roster was announced this week between episodes, and we usually save the roster announcements for the roster changes section of the show. But since Team AI is a part of Relegations, I want to go ahead and talk about this new roster that they have. This is a better team, I think, than what their old roster was, and people might call me crazy for saying that, but we were saying since Zapman left and since they moved on from Eager organization that the team was just there to finish out the split, that they weren't expecting to really win with that roster, and they were just trying to, like I said, finish out the split. Now you got players that actually want to be on the team and play on this team, and I just think it makes them better. We know Xenotronics El Chapo coming back. That wasn't a surprise. T-Money is the rookie mid laner now. I believe he was the substitute for Eager when they were still Eager. Incon's trying to find his last shot at the SPL. I believe this is his last shot as a team, as a member of a team, if he doesn't play out of his mind. And then Walrus has always been that guy, that next best solo laner that really hasn't taken that step to be a great player. He's just been finding himself, floating between teams. And I say this team is better than the last AI roster because I think we actually have players now that want to play for this team and are not just looking to finish up, get their paycheck, and move on to the next team that they have. So,
yeah, I'm not entirely sure whether they're going to be better. And motivation-wise, I think you've got a point there that they're definitely going to be more motivated to play well than the old AI roster did. But just purely from the skill, player by player, the old one or the new guys coming in just do not match up with them at all, right? Maybe Walrus is getting somewhere close to Divios' level, but that is a stretch, I think.
Let me clarify. I'm not in any way saying Walrus is better than Divios or Team Money's better than Best or Incon's better than one. I'm saying that the 5 players on the last team, on the last AI roster, weren't motivated to play for anything other than just the paycheck and to get through the rest of the split. This team, the roster as it is now, it's a team that chose to be there, that wants to be on the team, and there is a huge motivation factor that can play in there, that these guys want to play for this team and not just finish out the season.
Yeah, and I think you've got a point there, that motivation is obviously going to be a big factor, but the thing is, in my opinion, this AI team that we saw was not that, the previous one, right? Despite not having any motivation, because individually they are so good, right? We're still talking about Divios, Best, and Aurora here that have now left the team, and that are some of the best players in their respective roles in NA. And I'm not sure someone like a Walrus, even though he is a good solo laner, can match even close up to Divios, and that someone like T-Money can get anywhere close to the skill of the Best, and that Incon is anywhere near the level of Aurora. And with that in mind, I'm not entirely sure that they're going to be better than that old team, right?
Not talent-wise, no, but as
but I mean performance-wise as well.
Team, I think I don't. I expect a good performance from this Team AI, at least this weekend. I think they have a solid roster to win out in relegations, that they're going to find themselves in the SPL. But I do believe that once they make it into the SPL, that it's a growing thing. They have to grow as a team. In Season 2, Incon was considered one of the best supports in NA. Him and Jeff were trading spots every week on who's the best support this week. So Incon, we know he has that kind of play style. Walrus, like I said, he's been that next best solo laner player for a while, but he hasn't really found a home or made any kind of strides at getting really, really good. But he's still a fairly solid solo laner in solo lane option, and he, with the free agents that were available to this team, he was obviously the best choice, because we knew Divios wasn't coming back to this team, and those are the only two solo laners that were free agents at the time. Fine OK is now a free agent as well. We'll touch on that later when we get into the roster changes for this week. But Walrus was obviously the best option that they had at the time. Not a bad option, if you ask me. He's still one of the better solo laners that you can pick up if you want to be a decent SPL team, right? He's not Benji, he's not Divios, he's not Cyclone Spin, but he could match Scary D. Scary D was considered one of the, if you believe what Hindu Man is telling you, is considered the second best solo laner in NA. If you're more of a casual fan, you say Scary D's a little bit further down, but Walrus is, I believe Walrus can be right there with Scary D as being that solo laner that's underneath the top three, that is reliable and that you can count on week to week.
Yeah, like I think the way you are making it sound almost is, I think we're both kind of, or you are undervaluing the AI roster that we had in the second half of the split, because I think they were by no means a bad team, right? They took games off of other big teams as well, or other teams that we would consider good. And just from looking at it from that perspective, I do not see this Team AI roster doing that. Whether it's going to be good enough to make it through relegations is an entirely different story, right? But with the current roster they've built, I do not see them being better than the old Team AI. Obviously, that says nothing about the players that they've gotten and whether they were truly the best options available, which they probably were. Like Walrus is a dream player to pick up as a free agent. Just he's good. That's all you really need to know about Walrus, in my opinion. But T-Money and Incon both have question marks behind them for me, because Incon has not played anywhere near the level that he's shown in Season 2 for I think an entire season now, essentially. And T-Money, I do not know enough about him to really say whether he's going to perform well within this team. But overall, I have a hard time imagining that they are going to match up to the level of the old Team AI overall. Just because, even if it's just because they had so much more raw skill, right?
Well, I agree. I don't think this team is better than the old Team AI roster. I do feel like that if they make it through relegations, they could end up having a better record, because they're 5 players that actually want to play on the team or are motivated to win as this team. Because it's, especially for Incon's case, this could be his last shot at being on an SPL team. And now we know that if they don't finish 6th or above, that he's not going to be on an SPL team next split. We know that already.
Spoiler.
We'll talk about that in a minute, but this is his last shot to prove that he can play at this level. And I think that's motivation enough for him to step it up he was not bad on ALG when he was playing with ALG as their support. He wasn't bad. He wasn't season 2 Incon, but he was not bad. There were still flashes of the old Incon that we knew. And if he can find that again, and I believe that support is his best role, especially at this level, he might prefer mid lane over support, but at the SPL level, he's a much better support. So this, in my opinion, is his last chance, and I think that motivation plus the team being 5 players that want to play for this team, that chose this team, is going to cause them to have a better record than that last team AI. Not that they're better individually, but that they're motivated to be a better team. So they will lead. That should give them the best, having a better record than their old roster.
Yeah, like in risk of going around in circles, I still think it's not going to be enough, right? I think having better motivation is going to be great and all, and Incon is going to be motivated, but he's not going to be in a roar, and they're not going to be as much of a unit as the old Team AI was, despite everything, right? And they might have the potential there, depending on how T-Money steps it up, and depending on whether Walrus can improve even more, and whether Xenotronics can really establish himself as a good ADC. But right now, I do not have too big hopes for this team, honestly. Making it through relegations would already be enough for them, in my opinion. Something that they could already be proud of.
I expect them to make it to relegations, to be honest. I think this team is clearly one of the top 2 teams coming into this relegations. But like we said with EU, the best of ones, you never really know how that's going to play out.
Yeah. I think we've already talked enough about Flashpoint to that everyone should know by now. We do not expect them to make it through relegations, right?
They should. If you haven't listened to the show before, go back and listen to what we have to say about Flashpoint. You'll know all that you have to know. We don't have a very high opinion on Flashpoint.
Yeah, even on this new roster, because I think we said last week it doesn't really look better than the other one. But yeah.
See, the thing that stands out to me is Xenohawk and McZaddy. They were on a Challenger circuit team that was below the 2 teams that made it to relegations. Yeah. So you're putting, not that they're worse players individually than anybody on the other 2 teams, but their team finished below the other 2, and you're expecting to win with them. Doesn't make sense to me. So, but moving on to the Challenger Cup teams that we're actually going to see. I've been saying it for weeks. SPL Gatekeepers are probably the best team. I would say the best team coming into this relegations, and I'm high on this team as a whole. Payne Divion, I love Payne Divion. I like watching him. I think he's it's a very good player and is one of the best supports in the world. His talent evaluation is second to none, and he's found, in my opinion, the next great jungler in Grave. I've watched 2 or 3 games of the SPL Gatekeepers this last Challenger Cup circuit team or circuit split, and Grave was the one player on the team that stood out the most to me, and I think he's going to be the next best jungler if he gets a shot to show what he can do. And on a team with Payne Divion and Day to remember, the team should be good enough to allow him to show what he can do in the SPL this fall. Oswald and Mando Warrior are two fairly unknowns, though I've played a few matches with Oswald during qualifiers for ranked, and he's carried me every game that I've played with him. So I have a high opinion of Oswald. I don't really know Mando Warrior all that well, but just based on his name tells me that I love him. If you don't know what a Mando is, it's a Star Wars. It's basically Boba Fett. Boba Fett is a Mandalorian warrior, and the short for Mandalorian is Mando. So just based on his name alone, I'm gonna love the guy. So, but
yeah.
I have a high opinion of the SPL Gatekeepers, and I expect them to be the other team that comes out of this.
Yeah, see, what makes me hopeful for them is just the fact that they have Pain the Beyond as their support, because that already seems to tell me that the rest of the roster can do something. Because we've seen him like several times now bring inexperienced players into this sort of roster where they're basically just no names and Pain the Beyond, and have some success with them, right? And if this was another case of that, I would not necessarily be surprised if Grave ends up being the best jungler in NA in the next season. I would not necessarily be surprised, because he had his origin on a Pain the Beyond team. Same thing with the other guys, right? And that's why I have some hopes for this team and for all players within it, right? I think they should have the talent it takes to make it to the SPL, purely off of the fact that they have Pain, Data Remember, and Moswell, which should all be good enough to beat this Flashpoint roster at least, and the other Challenger Cup team, which they've obviously beaten already, probably because otherwise they wouldn't be the first seed coming out of the Challenger teams, right?
Well, this is what I have to say basically about Pain to Beyond. Other players that have replaced, or other captains that have replaced players on their team, don't have as much success. Look at Shadowq. He's never been able to find that player from the Challenger circuit and that will come to the SPL and make him a success. Shadowq has never done it. Pain to Beyond has done it twice already. In 4 seasons, he has done it twice. Finding Benji and finding Chaos, who's now working for HiRez, Vedium as well, and then after they make a run to Worlds but end up losing to Epsilon, he does it again, brings in Bariziel and Pandacat and Marauder, yeah, that's his name. And they go on to being top of the NA for season 3, spring split of season 3, and taking Energy to 5 games at the Espelon Invitational. So Pain has done it twice. A lot of the other captains in the league have not even done it once. And so for Pain, just Pain being on his team, we know Day to Remember is a streamer. We know he was on that Oxygen Supremacy team that made it the run through Gauntlet in spring, and so we know just by Pain to Beyond and Day to Remember being on the team that it should have a fairly good shot at coming out of relegations. And with Pain's, like I said, with Pain's talent evaluation being second to none in the entire league, probably the entire Smite world, you got to assume Mando Warrior, Grave, and Moswell are going to be more than up to the challenge of beating Man Ray and Mexati and Xenohawk or Uzi, Plasma, and Veneno. Like, this should be the number 1 team coming out of relegations. I expect the SPL Gatekeepers to be the number 1 team at the end of this weekend.
Yeah,
just for relegations. Just for relegations, not for the SPL.
Yeah,
just for relegations.
Yeah. Yeah, well, like you said, Paint of Beyond has an eye for talent. Apparently, just history seems to suggest that, and based on that, I think they will make it through. Just because, like as I just said, basically, when you see a Paint of Beyond team and you see no names on it, these no names do not necessarily mean the same thing as no names on other teams. On Paint's teams, they are generally actually good, or they are at least good within his system that he likes to play. And with that system and with these good players that he's probably going to have, they should be the best team. The best team at relegations, unless AI really finds themselves very quickly, and even then, I think it's somewhat questionable. So yeah, but the other team coming out of the Challenger circuit is obviously going to be a Mighty Storm, and names were said already. A couple of them that we know, I think Ozzy is a name that a lot of people have heard before. Venenu, definitely one as well. Vivian was briefly, I think, in the Spring Gauntlet, the support for ALG.
Support for ALG during the Gauntlet, yes, that was him.
And I think he was on Gatekeepers as well, right? When they tried to get into the SPL in the summer.
No. Well, he might have been during the summer relegations, but the ALG support that's their support now was the support during there was the support for Oxygen Supremacy during their run through the Gauntlet.
Oh yeah, I probably had something mixed up there, right?
But yeah, Vivian was replaced. Vivian was replaced on that ALG roster by their new support.
Coming from Oxygen Supremacy.
Yeah, coming from Oxygen. And so yeah.
Yeah, and Ghost is a name I've heard before as well. I'm not sure where entirely. I think he was subbed in for someone once.
Was the LG... I believe he's the substitute for LG. He might have been the coach for LG. I'm not sure. But again, a lot like Moswell, he's one of the players I recognize because he did carry me through qualifiers for ranked during the summer split. So yeah, he was one of the guys that carried me. I got into a match with him as his support, and he was Scotty ADC, and he went 20-0 and carried me. But to be fair, I was also on a team with Mango, which was the old solo laner for Most Wanted Esports in the Challenger circuit. So I was carried that team one way or the other. I was being carried that game one way.
Yeah, it's good luck. It's good for you that you had them on your team and not on the enemy team. In that case.
But I have ended up playing against Aurora in the best and Divios before, so that was not a fun experience.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, I actually played against Vote once in a casual Vote NBK, or just Vote Now, and he was playing Ymir, and I was like before he went into the SPL, but he was already pretty good.
I got into a match of the day against Divios Aurora in the best, and Divios, it was one of those where it was 80% cooldown. Divios had Camazotz, and he went like 36-4.
Oh god. So yeah, by the way, Ghost actually played for Randozos, I think, in the fall last year, or he was at least subbing in for them at times.
I'm not sure. I know he was the substitute or something for LG during the spring and parts of the summer. I think he joined this team still being the substitute for LG. So, but there's enough names that we recognize on this team. It should be a fairly competitive team. Though making it out of relegations, I don't expect it to happen. Uzi was Noble's sole laner next to El Chapo in the spring. Benanu played next to Incon on ALG's fall split roster for last year. And of course, we've already said Vivian was the support that played during the played for ALG during the Gauntlet in the spring. Plasma is the only name that I'm not familiar with on this team, but
yeah,
again with Team AI's roster and just Payne Divion having an eye for talent, the SPL Gatekeeper should be good enough that where Mighty Storm. I think this is more of a showcase for the players than them expecting to be able to make it through this. I think this is Benanu should be good enough that if Team AI wants, maybe Team Money doesn't play good enough or doesn't play well this week, but they somehow still make it through relegations, that Benanu should be good enough that they can poach Benanu off this team to replace Team Money and move Team Money to the substitute role. But as a team, it's a strong team. Don't get me wrong, but it's the third. In my view, this is the third best team in this relegations.
Yeah, well, it's hard to be much worse than Flashpoint. So I would.
That's why I said they're the third, not the fourth.
Yeah, that's why I would generally agree with that. That's what I was going to say. Let me agree with you. I just need a couple of seconds.
Psycho's not here anymore. Psycho's not here anymore. I can't rely on him to intercede when you talk too long.
Well, yeah, I think you're pretty much right there. That they should be the third best team. AI probably has better shot of making it through than them, and Gatekeepers probably have the best shot overall, and Flashpoint clearly the worst shot overall. And whether any poaching is going to be happening, I think, depends on what you said as well. But I think on a good day, they can take AI and maybe even Gatekeepers. And if they get a good day, we might see them in the SPL.
They're a fairly well-rounded, well-balanced team for a Challenger Circuit team, but they are the second Challenger Circuit team coming into this relegations, and SPL Gatekeepers obviously finished at the top of the Challenger Circuit. Mighty Storm was that number 2 team, and so just based on the past that they have, SPL Gatekeepers should be good enough to handle them and win their matchup against Mighty Storm. Like I said, they all play 3 games. They all play each other once. Best of 1 scenarios, you never know. The best teams don't always win those 1-game play-ins, but they should have a better shot than their competition if they're the best team. Any final thoughts, or do you just want to go ahead and make final predictions for the NA relegations?
Don't think I have any final thoughts, no. So yeah, predictions. You can start.
It's fairly simple. We've been talking about this and we've been leading this way the entire conversation. Team AI should be one of the teams, and the SPL Gatekeeper should be the other team. Flashpoint, I don't see anything from this roster that says it's going to happen. The Mighty Storm, fairly recognizable, fairly solid team, but just based on the competition, AI and SPL Gatekeeper should be good enough to keep the Mighty Storm out of NA. So there's my predictions: SPL Gatekeepers and Team AI.
Yeah, I will just agree with those because for all the reasons we just talked about, really, right? There's not much else to really say. We've already nailed it on the head, I think. So yeah, other things that happened. Well, the one big other thing that happened this week, apart from any roster changes, was actually today. As I said, just about 2 hours ago now, HiRez Dan posted on Reddit a preview to how Season 5 is gonna go, and we have a couple of talking points here that we would like to go over real quick, and just talk about them basically. Sabo, you can pick one first to start.
Well, I think the one that stands out the most is the organizations that are a part of the SPL. Well, actually, a part of the league in general, not just the SPL, but the Challenger Circuit, the spots below the Challenger Circuit, the Challenger Cup, every organization that is a part of the esports scene in Smite is going to be required to give their players a living wage salary. That's the number that HiRez Dan used was $30,000 minimum, and that's really good in my opinion. That's probably better than what you can expect or what you would normally expect an esports player to make outside just as a base salary, outside of tournament winnings, outside of a whatever they make streaming. It's a livable wage, at least. It should be enough to pay a monthly rent on a good apartment, pay all your bills, and be able to eat and provide for, in Stealth's case, a child now. But it's a good base salary for any player. It's if you're an organization that wants to be a part of the league, you have to be able to provide a minimum wage, minimum salary for your players, and it's a step in the right direction in my opinion, because that brings more stability to the league.
Yeah, all changes are really aimed at bringing more stability overall. This is obviously going to be one of them. Living wage, it sounds like it would be, right? I'm not entirely sure of what averages are in the US and all that kind of stuff, but I know that it seems like you could live on that, and it's overall a good change, just in general, yeah. There's some other point I wanted to make, but I just forgot. I'm an idiot. Help me.
I can't read your mind, so I'm not sure where you were going with this.
Why not? What did you say at the start? Comparison to other esports. I was going to talk about that. It depends on the esports, right? As into how far it compares, really, because there are esports where you are paid much more as a top team. Like, right, we're talking about essentially the 12 best teams in the world, right here, the six SPL teams of either region. There's no real doubt that these will most likely be the 6 best teams in the world overall. And if you are one of the 12 best teams in something like CS:GO, you will most likely be paid more than that, like massively more than that.
That's a bigger a bigger game, a bigger market. The thing with it being comparable to other other esports is you gotta kind of look at them basically at the same level, based on how big the esport is, based on how good the player is, how good the team is. They're going to get a certain amount of money. And I say this is comparable because it's in terms of Smite, it's comparable to CS:GO or League of Legends. It's a comparable base salary, not money wise, but not number wise, but based on how big of a game it is. League of Legends, CS:GO, a lot more viewers than the SPL, a lot more viewers than Smite. They're going to get more money. But comparing the number of viewers in the SPL compared to the League of Legends, the $30,000 minimum should be comparable somewhat percentage-wise with the other leagues.
Yeah, I think it makes sense for Smite standards. This is a very good salary, obviously, just because comparing it to the viewer numbers, I think it comes out at around the same for the top teams overall. And yeah, other changes that are going to be happening is that the SPL is going to be slightly smaller. Well, actually quite a bit smaller. It's only going to have 6 teams going into the next year. And another special thing that's going to be happening is that organizations that are in the SPL are going to guaranteed have that spot for the entirety of the year. So what this essentially means is that relegations will be gone, and there will be no more way for really challenger teams to make it into the SPL as a whole. It's now just going to be the players getting picked up by the SPL rosters, hopefully, if they are good enough. What do you think about that?
The thing I see with this, yes, the SPL should be it should have a higher, more interesting games, because the lower 2 SPL teams that in the past haven't been all that fun to watch, haven't been all that competitive based on how they compare with the other top teams. Having a smaller team pool, it should help the competition of the league. The better players should be able. Teams should be able to see the better players and then bring them up to their team based on their needs and stuff. Relegations, it's. I like the fact that there's not going to be relegations. At the same time, I hate the fact that there's not going to be relegations, because it's not going to allow these teams as a whole, instead of just individual players, but these teams as a whole that have worked at their craft and have made steps to become better as a team, to be able to move into it until season 6, because the organizations are guaranteed a spot for the entire season. But at the same time, we will get to see some of these challenger circuit teams compete against these SPL teams at LANs and having a shot at making it through the gauntlet to be able to compete in next year's Worlds. So that's not going away. It's just seeing the teams that grew together, they will no longer have a shot at making it to the SPL, which is, again, it's a bad thing, but it's also a good thing, because the talent in the SPL should be higher as a result of SPL only having 6 teams instead of 8.
Yeah, the overall level will be higher. I'm not entirely sure if it's going to be beneficial overall, or, well, I'm not sure if I like it overall, because I liked having 8 teams in the SPL, and I think it's a good situation for the bottom 2 if they can use splits to really improve and grow into the SPL. Obviously, that's not going to be as much of a thing anymore, because we're not going to have full Challenger Cup teams making it to the SPL anymore. But I don't see too much of an issue with having a bit of a wider spread between the top and the bottom, especially if both sides still have to fight over wins with the mid-tier teams, which I think was the case this season in both regions, right? We had AI splitting with Luminosity, for example, when Luminosity was one of the top teams, and AI is now going into relegations, right? So, especially on the NA side, apart from Flashpoint, I don't think the bottom teams are bad enough that excluding them from the Pro League is necessarily a good thing.
Well, there's some other changes to the Challenger circuit that I think helps out those bottom two SPL teams as they move down into that Challenger circuit level. The fact that it's going to be an increase in prizing, but at the Challenger Cup level by 500%. They will have their own lands. He mentioned that there is going to be a Challenger Circuit LAN that brings all of the Challenger Circuit teams to a LAN format and allows them to showcase their individual talents for SPL teams to view and look at, as far as not just online play goes, but as what players can do at LAN. And 500% increased pooling, that should be more money in the pockets of these lower SPL teams, these bottom two teams, because they weren't making enough of a livable wage that they could, like the money between the top SPL team and the lowest SPL team was such a wide gap that it really made no sense for the bottom two SPL teams to be able to play in the league because they weren't making as much money. So increasing how much Challenger Circuit teams are getting paid and putting those two teams at the bottom of the SPL into that team, into the Challenger Cup, it should make a fairly good level of money there. Yes, the SPL teams will be still be paid higher, still be paid. Being able to they in fault have more lands to compete at, so they should have more money for prizes. But the Challenger Circuit team, the Challenger Circuit as a whole should benefit from having two extra teams and having more money on the line draws more players to compete at that level. So that it's kind of a step in the right directions for the Challenger Circuit while not hurting the SPL too much.
Yeah. I think the Challenger Circuit's going to benefit in some regard. Before that, I want to quickly loop back to the relegations thing still. The no relegations thing in Season 5. As a European, I'm very much used to relegations happening in sports here, in the regular ones, whereas NA, from what I understand, is structured a bit differently. And I've always had my issues personally with not having relegations, because I think the most important part of a team should always be putting together the best team that you can. And once the danger of dropping into a lower league like the Challenger Cup is no longer there, I think the issue arises where popularity of players becomes somewhat more important. Like what I mean is, if a player is more profitable than another, for a team that is in threat of getting relegated, which generally is like every bottom half SPL team in this case, it would not make sense for them to pick up a worse player who's more popular, just because he would make them more money, but they would run the risk of losing that money by dropping into Challenger Circuit. With no relegations, it now makes sense, right? Because your placing in the league itself is basically irrelevant.
Well, I agree. At the same time, I disagree. Bringing in a lower caliber player because he's going to be able to make you more money based on popularity, that's no longer a thing. Like with the minimum wage or the minimum salary that they're going to have, every player is going to be paid the same. It's going to be LAN events that where they're able to make prize money based on how their performance in LAN event is going to go. So, bringing up a player, just a popular player, even though he's a worse player, it's no longer going to be the case because you're not going to benefit from it monetary wise.
Well, the team is not, right? The team isn't going to benefit from it, but the org itself will. And while Smite orgs have been very hands-off in their approach to how they manage their teams, this could cause a bit of a change in that regard, because once the financial success is no longer directly tied to the competitive success of a team, which has for now always been the case in Smite, really, it's going to make more sense for a team, for an org to look directly into how they can maximize their profits by putting together the best team based on popularity that they can. And that's just the thing that worries me a bit, is how it's going to affect this ecosystem overall. Because right now, a lot of the roster changes that have been made have been initiated by players, and it's generally helped the scene overall, or the competitive level of the teams overall, just because they're obviously not going to make changes if they don't think it's going to give them a competitive advantage, which could be a tiny bit different now. So that's what worries me a bit, just in general.
Well, a lot of esports organizations make their money through advertising, right? They make they sign these players that are popular and that can have as many views on their brand as they can. They want to sell T-shirts, they want to sell jerseys, they want to sell hats, jackets, whatever they can. They make most of their money off of their sales based on the players, how well the players are doing and how popular the players are. Yes, that could be a problem, but you're going to get a bigger viewage. You're going to get more views from being an SPL team, from being an SPL organization, than you would having other being a part of the challenger circuit. Just by default, you're going to have more people watch the SPL than they do the challenger circuit, so you're going to have more of a shot to sell your products, your hats and your jerseys and stuff. You're also going to have a better shot if your team makes it to these postseason events like LANs, like DreamHacks and Worlds and Super Regionals. You're going to get a bigger view, and to have more of that, you have to have the best players. Best players will get you to the LANs and will get you this. I can't think of the fucking word. I've been trying to.
Exposure? Yeah,
exposure. Will get you more exposure by making it to these LANs, and the best players make it to LANs. We've seen, and I bring up. God, my brain's not working right now.
Homiefi?
Yeah, I bring up Helmi Best, he's one of the best players online. He's gonna make it. He's gonna help you make it to LAN every time, and you get more exposure from making it to the LAN than you're not. So you're not going to get rid of Homie because he sucks at LAN, because he's going to help you make it to the LANs and get you more exposure.
Yeah, but the question is, what gives you more exposure, making LAN in general or making finals at LAN?
Well, the longer you go in a LAN, the more exposure you're going to get. But making it to LAN is making it to the LAN is such a big, exposure boost, a boost to your exposure that, making it all the way to finals and making it to LAN, there's a difference. You're going to be, people are going to tune into the finals, yes, but you're still going to have that exposure there just because you made it to the LAN.
Yeah, I don't know how orcs measure exposure overall, right? LAN obviously has more average viewers than normal SPL match is gonna have. So that's more exposure. You get to see the players wearing their actual jerseys, etc., which is more exposure as well for you and your sponsors, and it's obviously more exposure that way. The question is whether it makes up for a guy like Incon streaming something like 8 hours a day and having his weird Team AI logo displayed the entire time and a link to the Team AI store being plastered in chat every 5 minutes, all that kind of stuff. Because I think streaming also has a fairly large impact, and I'm not sure if for these specific players, like an Incon, like potentially a TM Brandon, it's going to be it's going to make more of an impact than LAN itself would, or more of an impact than the overall SPL play, the broadcast of the online matches of the SPL would. But yeah.
Well, the minimum salary should help with players wanting to stream more, right? I mean, you're not so your stream, what the money you're making off your stream supplements the 30,000 that you're making as a player on the SPL. And if you're a part of the team, part of a team like Luminosity, Barracuda, you know, where you make money off of your stream to supplement your earnings as a player, you know, having the base $30,000 is going to you're going to want to stream more because you're going to get money from your sponsors, money from your team, and you're going to get money from people subscribing. Yes, you have that $30,000 base salary, but you know, it could be that since teams are paying so much more money that they're going to be required. They're going to require you to stream. You know, so you can expose their team and their brand, and you get exposure from, you know, just playing the game individually. It should make it a lot easier.
Yeah, like I think that's something that's likely to happen as well. Although I think HiRez will be paying for a lot of those wages by paying the orcs themselves. I think they've said. But yeah, something that I think worries me a bit as well is, sure, the Challenger Cup pricing is going up massively by 500%. The issue with it is right now, I think last week we talked about 1:16 being the ratio of the top Challenger Cup team compared to the bottom SPL team, right?
Yeah.
How is that going to change, right? Because they are going to be shoving way more money into the SPL itself right now. And did you say they were expanding the Challenger circuit to 6 teams?
I'm not sure if they will do that or not, but they should, based on the fact that they will have 2 extra teams that are not in the SPL team, that the prize pooling is increased, that they want to bring in new talent. They want to showcase new talent. So having more teams at the Challenger circuit than 4, being able to showcase more talent should lead to a larger Challenger circuit, right?
Yeah. The thing is, though, once you start increasing the size of the Challenger circuit, you're kind of negating the effect this pricing increase has, right? Because if suddenly you have twice as many teams as you used to, having 500% of prize money is still only going to result in individual players having 250% of the prize money. And at that point, the difference between SPL teams, bottom SPL teams, and top Challenger Cup teams is still going to be very similar. And the issues with that, I think I talked about last week already, how this especially now that it's going to be a livable wage, is going to allow the SPL teams to practice way more than the Challenger Circuit teams realistically can, just because they will have to earn money through other means.
Well, are you familiar with the Premier League and football to you, soccer to me?
Yeah, in England.
Yeah, you're familiar with that, right?
Yeah.
The way now correct me if I'm wrong. The way I understand that it works is you're invited to the league. You have to be a champion of some sort of a league that you're in before you're invited to the Premier League to compete in the Premier League.
The way I understand it is how it works is they basically just have normal relegations. I think the bottom two teams, or I think one team gets automatically relegated anyway, so they just get dropped to the lower league, and two others have to play for their spot against the other teams coming from the lower league, because there's just a lower league below the Premier League that has a chance to promote into the Premier League itself. At least that's how it used to be. Or at least that's how most other European football leagues operate, where they basically just have relegations. That's the whole point.
Oh, maybe I was wrong, because I thought you had to be invited into the Premier League.
Well, I still think you have to fulfill certain requirements to play in either one of those leagues. I'm not sure how exactly they look. I think they have something to do with stadium sizes. They have something to do with security aspects, with all that kind of stuff. And if you don't fulfill those, even though you would qualify for the Premier League, you won't actually be able to get into it. So yeah. But the main idea is that you can promote into those leagues. That's how most European sports operate.
Well, then forget what I was going to say. I would imagine, though, that if once season 5 has ended and that the teams are getting ready for season 6, that there's going to be some sort of relegations with the Challenger Cup teams and the SPL teams to see who gets into the league. Though it might be the one-time thing where it's not, in between each individual split. Then just have relegations at the beginning of the year, and then whichever team wins that relegation has the spot throughout the entire season, much like season 5 will be. But we don't know that yet, and so it's just speculation on my part. They should have some sort of relegations at the beginning of the season to at least allow the Challenger Circuit teams to compete, because they will have a gauntlet like they have every year to give the Challenger Circuit team a chance to be able to make it to Worlds. So they'll have that, and imagine if they're keeping that around, they'll keep relegations around some form or fashion, just maybe not between each individual split.
Yeah, see, the reason that I'm not entirely sure they're going to keep relegations around is because of how they've announced how they will choose the teams for next season is going to work, right? Because right now the idea is that HiRez is going to choose the teams for next season based on the applications they receive from the different orgs, and probably with the rosters attached to the orgs. And
it did say something that the top 6 teams coming out of the fall split will have a better shot at making it.
Yeah,
as a part of those.
So I think that makes sense as well.
Seeding this fall split should have some effect on the which 6 teams we see next season. So,
see, the question here is, though, how fair of a system is this, right? Because they can say that it has an effect, it influences their decision, but there's no guarantee for that, first of all, and it's just generally very, very intransparent. in my opinion, based how the application process is going to work for the different orgs, and based on what they will be chosen. I think rosters are going to be playing a big role, which is why I think they are specifically mentioning that the existing teams will have a good shot at staying in there, because the existing teams are obviously going to have existing rosters to go with them. But apart from that, I think it's all a bit intransparent.
Yeah, we're gonna need more information on this in the future. But this, I believe, HiRez. This is just like the first bit of news we get. I'm assuming we're going to get a lot more than just this from HiRez. So in the future, I think we're going to get more information. But for right now, this is, like you said, it's not very transparent at all based on how this is going to work and how they're going to choose which organizations are going to make it into the league next season. I don't feel like don't expect this to be the only news we have. As they get more of the bumps and the hills and the issues worked out, they'll release more information.
Yeah, like it might just be that things aren't exactly clear to them right now as well. So that's why they can't give us any more information. But we'll be on the lookout for more. But as far as what else is contained in this post, there are a couple of other things that we haven't talked about yet. One is that the format for the SPL is going to change. It obviously makes sense to do that if you're going to reduce the number of teams. We'll now be having a double round robin per split. So that means each team plays each other twice, and it's no longer going to be in best of twos, it's now going to be in best of threes, which is obviously going to make a difference as well. So yeah, what do we think of that?
I think it's good that we're going to finally get to see a clear winner in each match. It's best of threes, it's first team to win 2 games. It can be ended up where it's only going to be 2 games because one team wins 2-0. But if it's 1-1, if they split the first 2 games, we're going to see an actual winner. And I think that's going to tell us who the better team is, at least for that period of time. And then each team getting to play each other twice, I think, is a good idea as well, because the old format, the old way of doing things, where each team would play twice. Each set of team will play twice. You'll get Cloud9 and Enemy in the first week, and then they'll go through everybody else, and then towards the end of the season, you'll get Cloud9 and Enemy again, and it might be completely different the next time. And so it should give us a better idea who the better team is and who is making who's becoming better as they play, and who's just staying the same, and who needs to improve. We should get a better idea.
Yeah, I just think best of threes overall are a good idea. Even though I like that the ability to have a draw with the best of 2 sets, getting a clear winner is going to be a bit more satisfying. Plus, based on the fact that it's going to be double round robin, right, we can still have essentially splits between the teams if they each 2-0 each other once. It's going to be, or 2-1 each other once. It's going to be the same as a draw in the current system with a best of 2. So that is still somewhat of a possibility. It's also going to remove one of the issues that a lot of people have had with the current system, in that a 2-0 is weighted so much more than a 1-1, right? Because obviously the 2-0 is giving you 3 points, and the 1-1 is only giving you 1 point, which is less per game won, essentially.
Yeah, it very much, if you keep the point situation where if in a best of 3 a team wins 2-1 and they still get 3 points, it comes back around and they play each other again, and the other team wins 2-1 and they get 3 points, and it essentially ends up being a split. And so yeah, exact same results, more we get more of a chance to see how the teams are playing, how the teams are growing, and we get it like it should clearly come out who the best team is. And it should bring more clarity to the league.
Yeah, and I think there's little you can criticize about having double round robin. Obviously, it takes twice the time, but that's not an issue for us fans generally, especially because it's an online league, right? It's not not really an issue.
With the reductions of teams from 8 to 6, it should come out close to the same amount of games.
Yeah,
like
honestly,
it should be fairly close to how many games that we were already having. So I don't think having more games is a bad thing, but we're not going to get too many more games just based on the fact that there's 6 teams and not 8.
Yeah. So if I did the math correctly, which I might not have, it's going to be 30 sets total now, best of 3s obviously, whereas previously it would have been 28 sets total, best of 2s. So the difference is pretty small, assuming a fairly decent amount of best of 3s only goes to 2-0, which I think is not that unlikely to happen. So yeah. But they are probably going to increase the broadcasting time quite a bit as well. So it's a good thing as well, obviously. And yeah, I think that's the way we can move on to the next change then. The other big thing that's going to be happening for the Challenger Circuit as well is that it's going to be aired on HiRez TV and using the HiRez TV casters. And yeah, that's a good thing for the Challenger Circuit. It's probably not going to hurt the SPL at all as well. So overall, I think it's a good thing, right? The casting team that HiRez has is good. I think most people would agree with that. It seems like people are finally starting to like all the different personalities we have. And
we get our caster team, our HiRez caster team gets compliments from other fans from other base games saying how good our casters are compared to theirs. So we got a good casting team at HiRez, and I don't think many people realize how good they actually are because they don't watch other leagues. But to get that kind of praise from fans of other leagues, that's pretty cool. Just tells you what everybody's how good these actual casters are.
I'm not sure who said something like that once, but I think it was League of Legends.
There have been a few posts on Reddit. League of Legends was one. I'm pretty sure we've had a few fans from Dota say that our casters are better than theirs. So we get praise from other fans from other games based on our caster team. So they're a great team, and just have them do the Challenger Circuit and have it aired on HiRez TV. That should increase the exposure for Challenger Circuit teams, Challenger Circuit players. So we talked about this last week. How they used to be casted, or they used to be aired on Tier Monster at the same time as the SPL, and they weren't getting the views of the SPL because they were pretty much in conflict for the time. And so they're not going to have that problem now. They're going to be cast on HiRez TV at a different time with the same casters that we're going to have in the SPL. What I see it hurting, the league I see it hurting is the console league, because it could still time away from the console pro league, and if you're a fan of the console league, which I'm not a fan of the console league, so it's not going to bother me all that much, but if you're a fan of the console league, the Challenger Circuit being aired on HiRez TV, there is a potential that it could hurt. We don't know the schedule, we don't know the timing, but it could hurt the console pro league going forward. But it's definitely a good thing for the Challenger Circuit.
Yeah. I've got some questions where scheduling, how scheduling's going to work, right? Because you probably want to have the SPL on the weekend, but it's also probably going to be the most likely time when you can really hold the Challenger circuit, just the games in general. And of course, pre-recording them on the weekend and then broadcasting them later in the next week is an option, but I'm not sure if they're gonna go down that route. But it's something.
Well,
Yeah.
and this just occurred to me, but what makes sense to me is if the SPL is just on the weekends and that they get rid of the Thursday games, because they're doing best of threes and they're doing double round robins now, they can afford to lose their Thursday games. They like it's not a big deal for the SPL not to be on Thursday. Just have the SPL Saturday and Sunday. Give Monday and Tuesday to the console league, and then Wednesday obviously patch notes, and then Thursday and Friday have the Challenger circuit play.
Well, the thing is, I think Thursday is actually the most popular day of the SPL, as weird as it sounds, right? And I think that's something that's stated at least some time ago when they made, or it was commented somewhere, probably years ago, and I will never be able to find it, so I will never be able to prove that statement. But it was there, I promise. But yeah, like if it's no longer the case, if the weekend is now the most popular time for the SPL, then it would make sense to move the entire SPL to the weekend and to have the Challenger Series run sort of under the week.
Well, just look at it this way: you got 6 teams, three sets a week, best of 3 format. You got nine games on Saturday, 9 games on Sunday. Well, up to 9 games on both days, and so why have that? If everybody plays twice, and why have that Thursday be SPL? Like you can make it where Saturday and Sunday are just SPL, and that it's the best of 3. Instead of each 6 weeks, you get 12 weeks. I'm not that's not doing the math, but if everybody's playing twice, three sets a week, and then going so much forward, it should be somewhere between 9 and 12 weeks.
Yeah, if it's 3 sets a week, it's going to be 30 games total in a split, right? And so it's going to be 10 weeks.
Well, yeah, and then you got best of 3 format. You don't have to have that Thursday game, that Thursday slot for SPL. Give it to the Challenger circuit. Give it Thursday and Friday to the Challenger circuit, and then keep everything else the same. Wednesday patch notes and stuff like that. So just keep everything the same and just give Thursday to the Challenger circuit. A lot.
Yeah, as I said, I think it depends on whether it's still the most popular day, which I have no idea if it is. Right? Otherwise, I do not see them dropping the first day when it's the most popular day. But it could easily have changed in the past 2 years. Yeah. The other change that is worth pointing out is we're going to have more LANs, and more LANs specifically between international teams. So teams from OCE, from Southeast Asia, from what are the other regions, LATAM and Brazil, against the SPL teams from NA and EU. Just because HiRez is really trying to get those to make those teams more competitive by putting them up against this high tier opposition that is the SPL teams more often. Yeah, that's going to be happening.
They're trying to make the international teams better by placing them against SPL teams. They're also trying to create a better league for these international leagues like OCE and like Latinum and Brazil. They're trying to make the game as a whole better on an international level, and this helps this should create better teams in these other regionals outside of the SPL, and so it should help that game internationally be better. We got a year before this happens, but they're replacing the super regionals with an interregional LAN before Worlds. I don't know how that's going to affect it. That to me is like almost the same thing as Worlds. Like you're getting a second Worlds with less exposure. We don't know. I don't know how that's going to work yet, but it would seem to me, with as much information we have, is that we're just getting a second Worlds that does not have the exposure, same amount of build up or prize pool or whatever. So we're gonna have to see more information about that interregional LAN, but we got a year before that because we haven't even done super regionals this year. So
yeah, I think it's an interesting change to make, specifically because it seems like they're going to completely replace regional championships, right? So we're no longer really going to have a regional champion, which will be a bit weird to think about, because that is a title that is worth contesting for as well, generally. But overall, it's obviously going to give the international teams more of a chance to play against the top teams from NA and EU, which is obviously going to be good for them. I think what I would have liked to see more is to have the international LANs, the regional LANs stick around, so that we can still crown a regional champion each year.
Yeah, especially during that time of year, especially during that build up for Worlds, where the rest of the season is over and you're getting ready for Worlds, and you want the international teams getting ready for Worlds instead of a LAN that's not Worlds that could end up exposing them before Worlds. So having a regional tournament to crown a regional champion should, in my opinion, is a better system than having an interregional LAN before Worlds. Unless, and this is a big unless the SPL teams won't be taking part in that interregional LAN.
Yeah, but from what it seems like, it sounds like that will be the case.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
In this situation, you're very much exposing those international teams to the same teams that they're going to be playing against at Worlds, and it's just a second Worlds. It does not make sense to me at all. We'd have to have more information.
Yeah. What I was going to say, what would make more sense to me, is not having it be a second Worlds by just not having the best teams from each region there, but by instead making it so it is a qualifier LAN specifically for the World Championship. Right? The way I would imagine it working would be that you invite, that you hold before this LAN, you have the regional championships between in every specific region itself. So you would crown an NA champion, an EU champion, an OCE champion, all that kind of stuff, and then afterwards, the teams that did not make Worlds through those regional LANs by being the champion there, or maybe in the case of EU and NA also being the second place there, would get a chance to still qualify through this international qualifier LAN.
You're talking about a wild card LAN.
Yeah, but essentially, but it would not be wildcards, it would be specifically a qualifier LAN that is interregional, right? It would be the offline qualifiers for Worlds.
Yeah.
It would be similar to the wildcard, but it would include the other teams from the other regions. And it would likely be on a different weekend. I think that would make the most sense to me, because that way you still have regional championships, but you can still try to give the international teams more of a chance of making LAN or getting practice against NA and EU opposition to allow them to catch up a bit.
Like and I'm gonna pitch a scenario real quick, and you tell me if this is kind of what you're thinking. Say Noble is the third place team in NA, and Luminosity and E United, just based on being first and second, make it, one being regional champions and the other one being the runner up to the regional champions, make it into Worlds based on their position, and then Noble will attend this interregional LAN with a shot to, if they win, to play at Worlds, right? Is that what you're kind of getting at?
Yeah, like it depends on how it would be structured, how many spots you would have, obviously. Depending on that, you would split it up into groups, potentially, where you have the different teams playing in different groups for the chance to make Worlds. If you have, for example, 4 spots available, you have 4 groups, and the winner of each groups, if each group gets to go to Worlds. Just that kind of thing. Right? It doesn't have to be a proper tournament where you actually crown a victor. It just has to be a tournament where teams have a chance to qualify, and where, specifically, different from how it is right now, international teams have a chance to qualify. But that is how it would work. You would have a set number of seeds from each region making Worlds by placing in their regional championship. So you'd have, for example, 2 from NA, 2 from EU, and 1 from every other region, making it directly to Worlds by winning their regional championship or making second place. And then you invite the third place, or the third and fourth in the case of NA and EU, for example, to play in this inter-regional qualifier LAN. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I like that idea, because it ends up being not a second world. It ends up being a tournament, or not a tournament, but a LAN where you can see, who is the best, who is the other teams that are around the world that are better, and not necessarily, it might not necessarily be the third and fourth place team from NA and EU that make it, but like the third place from NA and like the second place from Oceania or something like that. So you get a chance to see teams that didn't win their super regional or win their regional championships, but that you get a chance to see them at an interregional or an international stage with a shot at making it to Worlds. So it's a good idea in theory.
Yeah, it would obviously take more time to host that than it currently will do, right? Because we're likely going to get one interregional championship where
you can also do it like this. You can also do it like you did Season 3 Fall Split, where you have so many weeks, everybody plays each other once, and then they get placed into, LANs based on their seeding at that time. You can have it split up to 4 different LANs instead of just one big LAN, where the winner of each LAN moves on to this interregional LAN to play each other for maybe the final 2 spots at Worlds or something.
Yeah, that would make sense as well. Yeah, I think we're just gonna have to wait for more details on that later as well, as to how specifically it's gonna be handled. But I think we're both fairly excited for Season 5 with the stuff that was announced now. Some positives for us, some negatives, I think, as well. But yeah, do you have anything else, or do you want to wrap this topic up?
It's a fairly positive preview. It should be good things for the league. We do have problems, but like we said, this is just the first information. We should get more information as time goes along about how this is going to work. So it's just from first impressions, this should be good for the game, the esport side of Smite overall.
Yeah, I think that's the general conclusion we can draw from it. Is overall, it's definitely positive. So yeah, that leaves us at our last really big topic for today, which are obviously going to be roster changes again. We're still in the off season, so they're happening all the time. And two big announcements were made today. One is more concerning the org than really the teams themselves. And that is that Enix, the org itself, is leaving Smite due to some form of communication issues with HiRez. I don't think any details were revealed really by them, and so we have no idea what they're actually talking about. The team itself is going to be sticking together. They will be playing under Raylan Squadron, or shortened probably going to be VAC, VAC. Again, like they've done, I think, in the fall last year, or just at some point in the spring this year, maybe. And yeah, so the team will be sticking together, which is obviously good for Enix. And they're also going to add Nika as a coach to their roster. So we're going to see what he will be able to do with this team as well.
We've now had a team of players leave and an organization leave because of communications with HiRez. The changes that they're making in Season 5 should help fix all of that, but until these changes were announced a couple hours ago, I was convinced that this was an issue for HiRez and that they needed to take steps to fix it, and obviously they are trying to fix it with these Season 5 changes. And so I'm just going to leave it at that, because I do see HiRez making an effort to fix these things. But it really, in the short term, it really hurts the players because they're not getting paid from that sponsor now. They're just getting paid their winnings from the league. So it hurts the players right now, but with the changes coming in Season 5, it shouldn't be an issue for much longer.
Yeah, I'm a bit skeptical about the entire thing, just because we know next to nothing about what specifically these communication issues were. Right, in the case of what we heard from Richard Castle, we clearly know what the communication issues were, that just prize pools, etc., were not communicated, and that prize money was paid too late, and that all that kind of stuff. From Enix, we've heard next to nothing, so there's just skepticism in me is building up, right? Because this could also just be a well-timed PR move, honestly. If they wanted to get rid of their SPL team anyway, which they might have wanted to, because they're just a tiny org, essentially, then now would be the right time to try and blame it on fucking HiRez Communications.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense too.
So yeah, I'm not sure if I trust Enix with this, really, because Enix has not given me a lot of reasons to build trust. But yeah. Yeah, just what do we think how will Nika help this team, by the way? Because he's obviously training his coach as well.
Well, he's a player he's a coach now, but when he was a player, we've seen him in the hunter role, the solo role, and in the jungle as well. So he brings a lot of knowledge of different roles of the game that is beneficial in a coach from a coaching position, because you know basically how what each role is wanting to do in specific spots in the game. And so his experience and his knowledge of different roles and gods should help from the team. I don't expect a lot of changes being made with him being the coach, but it's just another set of eyes that is knowledgeable about the game that I think helps them out.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I would call Nika a player that has necessarily the best the best tools to be a great coach, right? He's never seemed to me like a very cerebral player, but it's hard to detect that just from watching gameplay, obviously. And obviously, getting a coach in general is always going to help. Whether Nika is going to be a great coach is still unclear to me. But overall, it should be a positive move for them, right? So, yeah. And with that, the next big changes that happened this week are really connected to each other as well. Because the first thing that we had happen was that Scaredy was announcing his departure from Luminosity. And then just shortly after, we got the announcement that Space Station Gaming just announced their new roster for the Fall Split, which is going to be the same for the most part. So they're still going to have Omiyavi Jungle. They're still going to have who's Andy Mid,
Mr. Mid and
Andy
Jigs.
Jig support. There's two new guys going to be joining. One is Sapman as ADC, which is something that we sort of were expecting as well, at least to a certain extent. And Scary D from Luminosity is now joining the Space Station roster as their solo laner. Finoke is currently just going to be a free agent. So yeah, what do we think?
Well, they didn't make a very good attempt at hiding the fact that Zapman was joining this team. I mean, it was week 4 of the summer split. They announced that Zapman was going to be finishing out the split as their ADC. Well, he didn't. He chose not to, but it's not like we didn't know this wasn't going to happen. So that's not a surprise at all. It was the Scary D thing that was surprising to me. We've been critical on Scary D in the past. We've said he's hurt LG, and he wasn't a fit for LG, and it's understandable just based on the evidence we have on how he played for that LG roster. But I think this is a good move for Scary D because you're not going down as far as where the teams are in the standings. SSG was, well, technically they were ahead of Luminosity in the summer split, but the teams are very comparable, right, in their standings. So you're not losing. It's not like you're going to a bottom team. You still have a shot to make it. You're on a team that has a shot to make it to Worlds and make it to Super Regionals and being able to compete at that level. The thing I see that it benefits Scary D from is he gets out from underneath the pressure of playing with Luminosity, right? He gets a new. He gets a chance to set a new narrative for himself, playing with a different roster. Where he was hurting that LG team with this play, he has a chance on the Space Station Gaming roster that if he can play well enough that he can pretty much, like, he's no longer a bad solo laner. He gets a shot to prove that he's much more than what he showed you on Luminosity.
Yeah, well, it depends on how you look at it, I think. Well, it's obviously a new chance for him to sort of redeem himself, but I'm not sure that the pressure coming from Space Station is going to be necessarily lower than the pressure he has currently on Luminosity, just because the team itself isn't really any worse on the paper than the Luminosity roster, and it has never been any worse, really. You have the same or a similar caliber of names in this Space Station roster that you had in Luminosity, right? Barra and Jeff, they are huge names, but so are Sandman and Jigs, and so is Andy, and so is Baskin. So whether the pressure will be much less is a bit questionable to me. I think it's just more overall changing the general environment can help Scary D as a player.
Yeah, the environment was what I was trying to get to. Like, we've seen he was considered the guy that was hurting Luminosity, and it was a popular opinion around the league that they needed to let him go. And just having a change of scenery for a player can, we know in other sports, can be huge.
Yeah.
I mean, Neymar just, I bring up football again, European football again, because Neymar just left,
Barcelona.
to get out from underneath the pressure of playing with another superstar or something. So a change of scenery in any case for a player of a professional level can help that player play better. Scary D should benefit from this because he's not under the same amount of scrutiny as he was. He kind of gets to reset that whole situation.
Yeah.
By going place.
And I think there's some questions as to what caused this move, whether it was Space Station actively wanting Scary D or actually just Luminosity wanting to get rid of him, right? Because from one perspective, for us it seemed very obvious that that Scary D was the issue on Luminosity, or at least the most easily fixable issue. So it would make sense for them to kick him and bring in a Divios. But first of all, we've not heard that they are going to bring in Divios. I think Barra has actively denied that. And second of all, it's never seemed like Luminosity as an org was really unhappy, or as a team was really unhappy with Scary D's performance. Whereas it would obviously make sense for Space Station to try and get a Scary D in as a replacement for FineOK, because you can say what you will about Scary D, he's probably still a better solo laner than FineOK.
Yeah, that I agree with that. Though FineOK was just a rookie, and he has played well as a rookie. Scary D brings a lot more of what the rest of Space Station Gaming has, and that's success at this level, a long success at this level, and so it's based on more experience than it is just raw talent. As I do think they're somewhat comparable, but like again, Scary D has much more experience playing at this level, and we've seen a higher ceiling for Scary D than we have for FineOK. So they're
and yeah, I'm not sure what else there's to really say about the move. I think overall we both like the move, precisely because we think while FineOK has potential, he's not shown as much potential and as much of a performance as Scary D currently. So overall, this should help Space Station. Getting Satman over someone like Vishim should also be an upgrade, right? Assuming Satman plays anywhere close to the level that he had during most of his career. So the Space Station roster is looking a bit better than what it used to, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's debatable. They still have that homie FA egg on their face or monkey on their back that he has to step up at these LAN events when they make it. But if Zatman plays like Zatman and he plays well, he's an upgrade over Vedium, though Vedium is not a horrible player in his own right. And then experience level and stuff like that, the factors we've already named, Scary D should be an improvement over FineOK. So yeah, the team should be better than what they were. But like I said, they still have that homie FA LAN issues to deal with. So
yeah, and I think that's still the big worry very point that we have with them. Whether Homiaf is going to overcome these issues going into the next LAN, right? Because obviously Worlds spots are going to be fought over at LAN again. So we'll see. We'll see how it works out for them. But yeah. As far as Luminosity is concerned, I already mentioned Divios as a possible replacement, although it has been denied by Barra. And I think we've talked about the other possibilities they have in the past already. Do we want to repeat that real quick?
No, we've done that 1,000 times already. Basically, they have two options. They can bring Divios in, or they can move Baskin to mid and bring in or move Baskin back to solo and bring in a new mid. But
Yeah.
like we said, we've talked about that 1,000 times already. So
yeah,
I wouldn't touch on it again. No.
Yeah, I think the other question remains is where Final K is gonna go, because it doesn't really look like there are a lot of NA SPL teams looking for a solo laner right now.
No. We should see Final K back in the circuit, challenger circuit, and stuff with those teams, but given like some sort of crazy happening that maybe Flashpoint wins in relegations and keeps their spot, Final K could be a potential fit for them because he would actually get to stay in the league. But like outside of that situation, I don't see right now him being in the league in the fall.
Yeah. So it's
and I'm just throwing this out there because a lot of people think he has played better than Aquarius. Maybe Final K goes to Noble. We've said it in the past. We hope this Noble roster sticks together. And so I hope that Aquarius keeps his spot on the Noble. So Final K, that's just another option for Final K, another scenario where we could see him in the league, but I don't expect it to happen.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind them. I wouldn't mind Noble taking him. I think Aquarius still has a lot of potential, but before that potential is realized, or before that you've seen some of that potential, it's always a bit of a risk to keep him with you, right? And we've seen more of Final K's potential, right? He's played on a higher level team than Noble in the summer. Obviously, Space Station.
You're also bringing up a situation where you're looking at both players for potential, and you got to decide as a team what you're going to do. Do you want to keep the potential that you know, or do you want to take a risk on a potential that you don't know? So.
Well, see, I think you know the potential of Final K as well already. You just don't know whether he's going to be a great fit for your team. But from what I've seen from both of these players, Aquarius and Final K, it seems like they would be very plug and play, because they seem to have a largely similar playstyle as well, which is why I think the move would make more sense than it would if they had a completely different playstyle.
I just think they should stay with the player that they know, that they've played with, and that they know how. Yes, the potential is same, if not higher, for Final K, but you know, you've played it with Aquarius for Split. Now you know what he's bringing to the team, and you know how you can play with him. And so, if the potential is comparable, if they're close enough that you can say, yes, they both fit onto the team, then just go with the guy you know already. Go with the player that you already know. So
yeah, there there can be some point to keeping the roster together, especially going into this final split of the season, right? So I would understand them if they stuck with Fine OK. God damn it, with Aquarius. It would make sense as well. I could see the reasoning behind that. But I would also not mind it if they were to replace Aquarius with Fine OK.
Well, we both expect this Noble team to make a run at Super Regionals and try to get to Worlds. So keep it like it is. I like the teams that tend to stay together over time. We've seen the success EU teams like Energy has had by keeping their roster together. So
yeah, but you have to realize currently the best EU team is Dignitas. Dignitas put their roster together at the start of the season.
Yeah, and they haven't made a roster change yet.
Yeah, everybody else has working.
Everybody else has made a roster change. Obey, Energy, Luminosity. Well, yeah, Luminosity with the release of Scary D has finally made that roster change. But, Space Station, Trifecta, everybody has made a roster change except for Dignitas. And Dignitas is the best team in the league right now. So there's something to say about keeping your roster together and growing as a team.
See, the thing I think is you keep your roster together if it is working well. And for Dig, it is working well right now, obviously, because they are the best team. And the others, the thing that I would compliment some of the EU teams for is that when it is no longer working together, they are willing to make changes, and they are willing to make changes based on what they think will work. That's why Energy is replacing Dimmy with Maniac, right? The thing with Noble is, as of right now, you can say that this team is working from a certain perspective, depending on what you as a team have as a goal.
And that you bring up that is the point. I think they might have made roster changes had they not had the success they had at the end of the split. Like if they didn't finish the way they did, I do expect them to make roster changes. But from right now, from a spectator's point of view, the roster is working, and that it's getting better as time goes along. And without that success, they make roster changes. But since they did have that success, I wouldn't say I don't want them making roster changes because they had that success.
Yeah, I can see that reasoning. Yeah, I think both things would make sense. Just that's my point, right? My point is that because the roster is working, they don't need a roster change. If they think it will be beneficial, I would still like to see them do it. But their opinion on what might be beneficial for them might differ from mine. I do not know I don't have a full insight into how their team works, right? So I can't really judge if bringing in Fine OK would be better for the team as a whole than keeping Aquarius will be. But yeah, overall we can obviously only make assumptions. So yeah, this was honestly the last roster change that I think happened in the last week. Nothing else too much going on, honestly, in the world of Smite SPL rosters.
After relegations this weekend, we should see more things happening as the fall split gets closer and closer, and as relegations get put behind us, we'll be able to see more. But really, there's only 3 big free agents out there left, right? I mean, the best, Dibios, and Bedium to a certain point. Those are the only free agents that are out there that we. I mean, unless you can name somebody in EU, but if Timmy is going to continue to be a coach, I don't see anybody in EU would count as a free agent, a big free agent.
Yeah, I think it's only those you mentioned. I can't think of anyone else either, honestly. But yeah, these are obviously options to be picked up, right? We now have 2 teams in NA who are looking for one player to fill their roster, with both Luminosity looking for a solo laner and United looking for a mid. So we will inevitably see more changes before the start of the Fall Splits, just because these teams need to fill their roster. Yeah, but unless you have anything else to say, do you?
No, not this week.
Okay, so no shoutouts. I'm just gonna give a shout out to F Dot, because why not? His show is going on right now, I think, as well. So yeah.
Yeah, he moved up the time frame from 6 to 4, and it's now 4:30.
Yeah, we should move the podcast to Monday still. Can't compete. We can't possibly compete with F Dot. Let's be real.
His is live, ours is pre-recorded, so they can listen to ours after they watch his.
Yeah, good point. Anyway, with those words, that's gotta be it from the Tuesday Night Smite podcast for this week. If you did like this episode, please leave us a like on YouTube or SoundCloud or wherever else you're watching or listening to this. You can subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on SoundCloud to get notified when new videos come out. On YouTube, there's also this little bell thingy that I don't even get. I don't think I've pressed it on any channel, but if you want to press the bell on our channel, I'm pretty sure we would greatly appreciate that. You can follow our Twitter for any announcements we have to make, for any predictions. We'll probably post predictions for the specific games for Super Regionals there as well for this weekend, so follow us there if you want to see those. And yeah, thanks to you all for listening / watching this podcast this week, and thank you, Sabo, for being here with me today. I really need to go, man. My English is failing. Ugh, it's terrible. Okay, just
No, we still have to sing the outro, so you can't quit on me yet.
No, our outro is only 4 words, and I'm sure you know them. Do you want to say them or should I?
I'm laughing too hard to say them.
Alright, everyone, good night, good Smite.